Okay, welcome back to the Algebra 2 final exam review. In this video, we're going to look at solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. And before we begin, we have to know what the quadratic formula is. So first, we need our quadratic to be in standard form. Standard form is when we have something in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And if we can identify what a, b, and c are in our quadratic, then we can use the quadratic formula, which is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we plug in the values of a, b, and c into this formula, and we will have our solutions. So, looking at number 37, for number 37, we have 2a squared minus 12a minus 144 is equal to 0. And before we begin with this one, notice that our variable here is a. So we have a squared and minus 12a here. That's not to be confused with the a that is here. So this a here is a constant, whereas this a in number 37 is our variable. So we want to be careful with that. And the other thing that we want to consider is that when we're plugging in values into the quadratic formula, we want to plug in the smallest numbers possible. So notice that each of these terms can be divided by 2. And if we do that, we get a squared minus 6a minus 72 is equal to 0. So now we have to identify what our coefficients a, b, and c are. So remember, that's the numbers that are in front of our variables and this constant here. So if we don't see a number in front of our variable squared here, or any variable, implicitly there's a 1 there. So our values for a, b, and c, we have a equals 1, b equals negative 6, and c is equal to negative 72. And so whatever variable we're using, in this case, our variable a, is going to be equal to the quadratic formula. So negative b, we have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 6 squared, minus 4 times this a, 1, times c is negative 72. So the square root of all of that all over 2 times our constant, or sorry, our coefficient a here, so 1. So this is a lot of stuff to plug in. However, usually at least when I'm doing these, I like to simplify this part, and this part as I'm plugging it in, so that I have less signs and parentheses to worry about, and it usually makes our expression nicer. So if we simplify negative 6, that's just positive 6. And for the inside of the square root, we have negative 6 squared, so 36 minus, and I usually write out the 4ac part here, so 4 times 1 times negative 72. And then 2a, we have 2 times 1, which is just 2. So if we simplify these parts right off the bat, we already have a much simpler expression. It looks visually less complicated than what we have up here. And because you're going to have a calculator on your exam, what I encourage you to do is put into your calculator the inside of the square root here. We'll talk about this in the next video when we're analyzing the discriminant, but I'm going to refer to the inside of the square root here, this value, as the discriminant. So if you put the discriminant into your calculator, you'll end up, or at least you should end up, with you have the 6 plus or minus the square root of 324, and then all of that is going to be divided by 2. So we have those charts that we filled out in class, or you may fill them out on your own, but you should notice that the square root of 324 is actually, 324 is a perfect square. Square root of 324 is equal to 18. So we can replace this square root of 324 with just 18, and we get 6 plus or minus 18 divided by 2. And also notice that because of this plus or minus, we actually have two different solutions. So that means we have a case where we have 6 plus 18 divided by 2, and we have 6 minus 18 divided by 2. And if we calculate these things, we have 6 plus 18, which is going to be 24, divided by 2, which is 12. And 6 minus 18 is going to be negative 12 divided by 2, which is equal to negative 6. So these are our values, or our solutions to our quadratic. We have a is equal to 12, or a is equal to negative 6. And so that's number 37. So this was a bit long, but to kind of expedite our process here, again, for future problems, or at least for the remainder of this video, I'm going to simplify this negative b here, the b squared, and the 2a, because those are usually pretty simple operations. We're just flipping the sign on b, we're just squaring b, and then we're just multiplying a by 2. So those will be pretty quick, which should hopefully make this a little bit quicker for the next few problems. So now let's look at number 38. So for number 38, we have 3n squared plus 2n minus 8 is equal to 0. We don't have a common factor between 3, 2, and negative 8, so this is already in lowest terms, which means we're ready to identify what a, b, and c are. For a, we have 2. For b, we have... for a, we have 3. For b, we have 2. And for c, we have negative 8. So a is 3, b is 2, and c is negative 8. So now we want to set up our quadratic formula, whatever variable we're using. So n is equal to negative b, so just negate 2. We have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 4, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 8, all over 2a. So we have 2 times 3, which is 6. So if we put this into our calculator, we'll have our negative 2 plus or minus, and our discriminant is going to come out to 100. So we have the square root of 100 all over 6. Well, what's nice is that the square root of 100 is also a nice number. Square root of 100 is 10. Which means that we have negative 2 plus or minus 10 all over 6. And this means that we have two different cases here. We have negative 2 plus 10 over 6. And we have negative 2 minus 10 over 6. So we calculate these out. We have negative 2 plus 10, so that's 8 over 6. And if we simplify that, we have 4 over 3. And for the other one, we have negative 2 minus 10, which is negative 12 over 6. And negative 12 over 6 is negative 2. So n is equal to 4 over 3, or n is equal to negative 2.